Welcome to the Soul Science Nutrition Podcast, where you'll discover that when it comes to your health, you're so much more powerful than you've been led to believe. And now, your host. She's a holistic nutrition and lifestyle coach, chef, author, and yogi, Christine Okezie.
Hello, and welcome to the Soul Science Nutrition Podcast. I'm Christine Okezie. Thanks so much for listening today. The more we build our understanding of the intelligence that governs this body-mind system that we inhabit, the more we can know ourselves better. The better we can step into the full capacity of creating true health and well-being. The chakra system is a powerful map to understand all the different aspects of ourselves, our patterns and tendencies, our growth and development, and how it all comes together to create the physical, mental, and emotional experiences we're having. Learning to work with our chakras, we embrace a model of ourselves as embodied consciousness, where body, mind, and emotions are an integrated system. The chakras give us a tool to support healing and integrating the various parts of ourselves. We learn how to use self-awareness, deep listening, and inner knowing to activate our innate self-healing potential. Natural healers and spiritual sages throughout time have long known that consciousness lives beyond the brain and the body. And thankfully, the study of consciousness is thriving in modern research, in neuroscience and psychology, with fields such as psychoneuroimmunology and epigenetics. Today's guest is a passionate expert, teacher, and gifted healer with over 30 years in the field of whole body consciousness. She's Glen Park, author of a newly released book, Chakra Healing Therapy, Awaken Spiritual Energies and Heal Emotional Wounds. In her book, Glen focuses on the psycho-emotional healing of the chakras. In her UK-based private practice, Glen brings together Chakra Healing Therapy and a special healing system known as the Alexander Technique. The Alexander Technique works with unhelpful patterns of physical behavior, while the Chakra Therapy works alongside with unhelpful psychological patterns. Integrating these two complementary modalities, Glen has developed a highly effective process for bringing about expansion and growth at the physical, psychological, and spiritual level. Glen has taught workshops on the Alexander techniques in Europe, the United States, Australia, and Japan. She wrote about this powerful combination in her first book, The Art of Changing. I can't wait for you to listen in on this expansive and thoughtful conversation. And if you enjoy the show, please feel free to leave a rating and review. I'd be grateful. And if you haven't already hit that subscribe button, please do so. It helps me keep the podcast growing. Thank you and enjoy the show. And welcome, Glen. Wonderful to have you here on the podcast.
Lovely to be here. Thank you for asking me.
So I love your book, and I love, your passion and expertise for sharing the chakra system, making it so accessible. When did you first become passionate about the chakras?
Right. Well, yes, I have a career that's changed directions quite a lot. So I did a degree in philosophy, which in those days, there was no jobs, philosophers.
Yes.
So they do teach it in schools now, but I came out of that not quite sure what to do, and actually ended up working in the theatre as an actress and writer, script writer, for 10 years, particularly with a small company that was supported by the Arts Council that travelled around to communities that don't often don't go to the theatre, not like the West End,
Yes.
Local people.
Yes.
And it was exhausting work, and I ended up being burnt out. I just was wrecked, and I realised I had to leave. Another thing was that in the course of that work, I was suffering from recurring back pain, and that was healed by an Alexander Technique teacher. So after this 10 years in the theatre, I decided I was going to train as an Alexander Technique teacher because it had been so helpful to me. Do you know what the Alexander Technique is?
Please share.
Right. It's called teaching because we teach people how to use their bodies in a way that supports their health in terms of supporting the musculature to be in balance. So people come to us with backache, neck ache, shoulder ache, you name it, or they might come to us because they're a musician and it's difficult to play musical instruments without getting into a mess in their muscles.
Yes.
Actors, a lot of actors work with the Alexander technique so that they have more control over their movements. Then you might get a dentist, because imagine how a dentist, stooping down, they can get awful neck pain. So it's, and we also have people like Olympic rowers have come and worked with the Alexander technique so that they are rowing at their very best, and runners and all sorts of sports people. So we just teach movement at a very simple level to people. So how to walk, how to sit and stand, how to do very simple climbing up the stairs, whatever it is, and how to do more complex movements like playing the violin or whatever. But the thing about the Alexander technique is it's not just teaching. As well as giving these principles of movement, we also work with our hands in a very gentle, you could say a healing sort of way. We put our hands on the body and we create muscular release.
Yes.
Just through our thoughts, actually, just through the way we're thinking, not through massage or anything.
Yes.
And so what happened was that I went to the States. I left the theatre. I was very lucky. I got an Arts Council grant because I'd done good service in the theatre.
Yes.
I got 4 months exploring women's theatre in the States.
Amazing.
Because I was in a small group that was a feminist group, the theatre group. There were men in it. But they said I could use this grant to explore theatre in the States. And I spent 4 months in the States traveling from one theatre company to the next, having a lovely time.
Amazing.
Just, talking about their work, talking about how we worked in the UK and so on. And it was a very interesting 4 months, at the end of which I was in California. And the friend of the friend that I was staying with said, well, while you're here, you must go and have a psychic reading. And this was news, I did not know what it was all about.
Right.
But I was in California and the new age was blossoming there, much more so than in the UK.
Yes.
So off I went for a psychic reading.
Amazing.
And introduced myself to this clairvoyant who picked up immediately that I was a bit skeptical. And then when she tuned into me, he said, well, I'm really surprised because you seem quite skeptical about psychic things, but you're actually extremely psychic. And because you don't know how to take care of your psychic body, your psychic mechanisms, you're picking up a lot of negative energy, and it's making you ill. Well, that was true. That was, I was burnt out.
Yes.
And had developed problems with my thyroid and so on. So, so it was quite accurate what she said, but I was still a bit bemused and didn't take it terribly seriously. I can't remember what else she said. That was the thing that stuck. Because when I got back to the UK and began training as an Alexander technique teacher, because of this gentle hands-on work that you get lots of in the training, just to get your whole musculature into a really good state so you can teach it to other people.
Yes.
My psychic I just developed psychically. I started to see auras. I started to really understand picking up negative energy. It would really affect me in a way that I was quite conscious of. And I began to get telepathic experiences that were perfectly clearly psychic. And I thought, goodness, that clairvoyant was right. I'd better do something about this.
Yes, we need a map. We need some training.
Yes. So I trained in the UK, very different in the UK to America. It was the Spiritualists Association that I trained with. And I never felt that I really belonged there because they train people to make contact with people who have died, who've passed into another realm. And I didn't feel that was really where my life was going. Okay. So 2 or 3 years later, I was back in the States, helping to run a course on the Alexander technique with the people who trained me and so on.
Yes.
And I made contact with the clairvoyant I'd met before and said, look, this is where I've got to.
Amazing.
What do I do now? And she said, why don't you make contact with the person who trained me to do psychic readings? And I rang this wonderful man up, and he happened to have a free week. He said, come along. I'd only got a week. He'd got a week. Mm-hmm. And we had this intensive week together where he taught me the basic principles that I have worked with and developed that the book has then resulted in.
Yes.
And he got people in so I could give psychic readings. Mm-hmm. He taught me the whole system of looking, because this wasn't taught in the UK,
okay.
The psychological levels of the chakras,
Beautiful.
The psychic levels, the spiritual levels. He taught me all these different aspects. And at the end of the week, he said to me, when you get back to the UK, you should focus on this chakra work, because I think you've got something quite important to do with the chakras.
Mm.
And I think he saw that book that I've just written.
Amazing. Oh, how divine. Really.
So that's what, and so I was still very focused on being an Alexander Technique teacher. But what was happening was, as I saw clients, as I did this gentle hands-on work, some of them would have an emotional outburst. They'd cry, or they'd remember something. They'd have an emotional memory surface from the physical hands-on work that I was doing. Mm-hmm. And I realized I needed more than just physical instructions to relax, widen, whatever. I needed some psychological help. And so I said, I think I should try working with the chakras with you, because I got a sense of what the energy was doing. Mm-hmm. And so I started to bring the chakras into my work, to bring a psychological level into what I was teaching. Yes. And then it developed from there. Some people just wanted to come and work with the chakras with me. Some people wanted both. Some people just wanted the Alexander Technique. And so it went on. And there's 30 years of client experience from that. Yeah.
Amazing. And all leading to the path of this amazing book and the body of work that you've created. Oh my God. Thank you. Yeah. So the Alexander Technique, it's so fascinating. It was from the 1800s, if I'm not mistaken, right? Sometime it's quite old.
He was born in the late 18. Yeah, he was born in 1860 or something, I believe, Alexander. And he wanted to be an actor, and he was getting all these jobs, parts on stage, and finding that he lost his voice halfway through a speech. And his acting was. And he went to every specialist he could. Mm-hmm. He went to doctors, voice teachers, you name it. And he still got this problem that he would get hoarse, not able to get the words out. And he would do this gasping. He would be, friends, Romans and countrymen, there'd be this noisy breathing. Lines and so on. So after approaching everybody for help and nobody able to help, he thought, right, it must be something I'm doing that's causing this problem. And he spent the next 7 years off and on looking at himself in a mirror, speaking, working out what he's doing wrong, until he evolved his technique and worked out exactly what the principles were, and was no longer having this problem on stage. In fact,
fascinating.
He was called the Breathing Man. He was an Australian, and he got nicknamed the Breathing Man. Well, then people started coming to him to say, teach me what you've learned. Mm-hmm. And he was trying to teach them these principles, and they weren't understanding, and he was getting frustrated. And so he started putting his hands on people and saying, no, get your head and neck in this relationship.
Interesting.
And that's how we got this build-up, this lovely mix of mind and body, the mental principles. This is how you think about your body. And this is the work that can help release tight muscles and bring everything into balance. So, he brought them together. In fact, his principles were that he said, you cannot separate mind and body. They are two aspects of the same thing, which fits with your work and mine, doesn't it?
Such a visionary. Yeah. And really, it's just fascinating to understand. It didn't come through, traditional or ancient spiritual teachings at all. It came from, first of all, just very individualistic experience, developing self-awareness, developing, just what we now know as interoception, right?
Yeah.
And not even have any of this language, energy, body, yet alone mind-body connection, none of that.
So important to follow those intuitions, isn't it? As well as the logic.
Exactly. I mean, even from back you started, there was nothing practical about your decision to go study philosophy, but clearly that was coming from, a higher level.
That served me all my life. It served me actually. And actually, there was one practical reason I studied, which is that at my advanced levels, we call them A levels in those days. I was doing sciences. I was doing maths, applied and pure maths and physics. And I realized that I just did not want to do a degree in maths or physics. And I had to look for something different to study. So philosophy opened a door for me, which has been the most wonderful door, actually.
Yes, definitely. Following the breadcrumbs, so important. So in your words, and for folks who are somewhat familiar with the chakras, how do you say, how do the chakras promote healing? Why is it useful for people to understand, even if they, don't know anything about, Vedic astrology or tantric, philosophy or anything? Why are the chakras such a useful portal for self-healing?
Well, they give us self-understanding, and they help us to understand that our lives are a developmental journey. So the lower chakras are all linked to stages of life. So the base chakras linked to time in the womb, birth, first year or two of life. The second, I call it our inner animal because it's purely about survival. Mm-hmm. The second chakra is dominant during childhood, when we want to feel loved by our family, and we want to have pleasure and happiness and explore this wonderful world and feel safe and secure. So that, just having a wonderful childhood is what we want as a child.
Yes.
But then that's the sacral chakra, the second one. And the third chakra, which becomes dominant after puberty in adolescence and young adulthood, is where we actually start to develop the adult self and begin to think very thoughtfully, consciously. It's linked to developmental changes in the prefrontal cortex, where we start to think more in more complex ways about what do I want to do with my life? Mm-hmm. Do I want to do I want to study philosophy? I say to myself,
yes.
People have very different things, and they think very, in very different ways about how they want to be an individual adult, no longer a child who's part of a family wanting to belong.
Yes.
But so it's those three lower chakras build the separate self, the ego, in different ways, and they're terribly important stages of life. But they're also the stages where we get our worst wounding. We get wounded in those lower chakras much more than anywhere else.
Yes.
So then the heart chakra, the next stage of development, is where we can begin to heal those wounds. The heart chakra opens us to a whole other realm of experience. It's where we have those really deep feelings of appreciation of nature, of beauty, of love, of compassion, all these really deep feelings. Whereas the lower chakras, it's the pleasure in the second chakra. The third chakra is about feeling self-confident and proud, But then there's this deep sense of connection with nature in the heart chakra, connection with other people, connection with animals. And that energy, it actually measurably expands when we have those sorts of feelings. I don't know if you know of the Heart Math Institute.
Of course, yes. Yes, wonderful.
So they have measured the electromagnetic field around the heart, which is much bigger than around the head. And when we have feelings of appreciation, of gratitude, of love, of loving beauty, the electromagnetic field around our body expands.
Yes.
And so you could see that as the beginning of measuring the aura. So I'll actually become a bigger person because we have this energetic field around us, which gets bigger with the heart chakra. And the heart chakra looks down at the lower chakras with loving compassion. And that's enough to heal.
Yes.
Just being able to accept and love ourselves allows healing to occur. We don't have to completely lose the wounds. Our wounds can be useful for developing compassion for others.
That's right.
We just have to love and accept our woundedness as part of our journey, which we've learnt from. And so that opens the door. As soon as that expansion in the aura happens, there's a huge expansion of energy from the crown chakra down through the top of the head into the body that's bringing inspiration, intuition, and enlivening the upper chakras. And you simple words for the upper chakras. There are 3 very profound moral principles that philosophers might suggest, which are love,
Yes.
and that's the heart chakra, truth,
Yes.
and that's the throat chakra, and wisdom, and that's the eye chakra. Love, truth, and wisdom. These, as the heart chakra opens, it brings us in touch with the upper chakras more. And it opens us to a spiritual level, because at a purely psychological level, the throat chakra is how we express ourselves, how we communicate.
Right.
And if we haven't done any self-healing, we will communicate our woundedness. That's how we will, and same with the eye chakra. If we've had a very wounded childhood, we'll see the world through those wounded lenses. The world is awful, people are nasty, whatever. But as the heart opens and the spiritual level opens, and we understand compassionately that woundedness, then we become wise. We see the world in a much broader perspective, a much wiser perspective, and a much more optimistic perspective. So that, we feel happier, we feel more positive about what we can give to the world, and with the throat chakra, we lose the false self that has expressed our woundedness, and we begin to develop the true self.
Yes.
And we speak our truths. We let go of all those ways we've adapted to fit into the world. And then finally, if we're lucky, develop spiritually, we can arrive at the crown chakra, which is always open.
Yes.
And it's a consciousness that's beyond even that expanded consciousness of the upper chakras. The upper chakras give us a bigger self. The lower chakras give us the small self. But the crown chakra moves right beyond the self, where we become at one with the universe. We experience non-dual consciousness. And that's a whole other realm that some people are lucky enough to experience.
Thank you. I have never heard someone explain it so eloquently and just relatably. So thank you for that.
Great. Thank you.
And beginning with, that, I mean, there's a lot to really unpack there, but the entry point is life is a developmental journey. And it's a matter, in the work that we do, it's, looking at the lens that we choose to view life through. And that makes such a huge difference. So the chakras are really, I think, as you say in your book, this embodied consciousness, that we work through.
Yes.
Amazing. And I love the distinction, the relationship. It's useful to understand, the lower chakras, the heart chakra being the game changer, as you call it in the book, right? And then the upper chakras. So there's this sense, as you walked us through that, there's this evolution, there's this active dynamic process that's happening. So how can we facilitate that, and I guess a good way to start is, what are some examples of folks who are struggling with some imbalances in the lower triangle, in the lower chakra system?
Okay. A lot of people in the culture we live in are struggling with their base chakra.
Okay.
Because the base chakra, it's our connection to the earth. It's what grounds us. And our culture's getting less and less grounded. If you compare it to indigenous tribal cultures, their connection to the earth is so much more real. So I think we can all build strength and support in our base chakra.
Great place to start.
Yes. And,
okay.
Simple ways to do that, just walking in nature is always grounding, but walking really mindfully, but beginning by really noticing that your legs and feet are doing this incredible job of carrying you through the world. Just feel how the weight falls on the heels and then the front of the foot, how the legs support you, and just really mindfully walk. And let it, allow yourself to be really in touch with your own animal body, which the base chakra governs.
Beautiful.
And then notice what's going on in the natural world around you. Even if you're on a street pavement, just look at the weeds that are growing. Just notice that life just pushes through wherever you are.
Yes.
There are insects and birds and creatures. And have a sense that you're part of that. You're part of that natural world. You're not some machine outside of it, watching it and thinking, oh, that's nature and this is me and I'm separate. Beautiful. You're an animal. You're an animal walking through this world as well.
Yes.
I think this is terribly important because I think it's linked to the fact that we're allowing this several environmental disasters to happen.
Yes.
And if we could really accept and love and take care of our inner animal, I think we would accept and love and take care of our planet a lot better. So I think there's an important knock-on effect with our relation to our own base chakra, our own grounding, our own inner animal, and our relationship to this world that we're treating with such disrespect. Just think about that base chakra. What are the words that we use to describe it? Mainly swear words. If you think of what's happening in the pelvic floor,
that's right.
What do we say? We swear.
Pain in the butt, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, the culture has rejected that. And I think we are paying for it in the way that our planet is getting damaged by it.
Yes.
So that's the base. I mean, there are specific stories I could tell, but I think there's a general story with the base chakra that's so important for all of us. The second chakra, I'll give a particular example. Someone came to see me who had done a lot of Alexander work, but he knew I worked with the chakras as well, and he wanted to work with both things. He was a very nice young man, and so I started working on him, and I tuned into the first and second chakras, which I do by putting a hand under the lower back.
Yes.
He lies fully clothed on the table, and I'm putting a hand under the lower back, where I can have a sense of the first and second chakras. And while his first chakra was flowing fine, his second chakra, and I also had a hand on his lower abdomen. His second chakra was numb. And then his third chakra was agitated, I would say. But I thought the problem is fundamentally in the second chakra. So I said, tell me a bit about your childhood. What was happening in your childhood? How was it? And he said, oh, well, when I was a young child, I grew up on a Greek island. It was idyllic. And I had one Greek parent, one English-speaking parent. We all spoke Greek at home. I played with Greek friends on the beach every day. This is up until the age of 8, when he was sent to an English boarding school.
Oh, dear.
He was living in paradise. And suddenly, he's not only got to deal with the English climate, which he starts in September, it just gets steadily worse for the next
Yes. This is true.
But he had to learn English as his first language. He was a Greek speaker.
Wow.
So and also he only was able to go and visit his family twice a year, he said, for Christmas and summer.
Very traumatic.
Easter holidays. He was stuck in this awful country that we live in.
Oh dear. Well, a lot of contrast.
Yes, and boarding schools are very, the English boarding school system was very unkind. It was not a nice place to live, really.
Yes.
There are lots and lots of men who talk about the woundedness they got from that experience.
Yeah, I can understand that.
So but the good news was that from 1 to 8 years old, he'd had a perfect life. So what we did was we started to connect him to that younger child that was very happy. And he started to do lots of fun things, like he did lots of walking and swimming and going to the beach and so on, and building strength in the happy child. He had a sort of happy child and a sad child. So he started to really support and love the child that had then been neglected from 8 onwards. And that helped a lot. And then that started to get the energy flowing in that chakra. And he treated that unhappy, wounded child with compassion.
Oh, my goodness.
He was able to work through and build some strength and support. And he actually began to run courses, his work for young people.
Beautiful.
To go out into nature and have fun and so on.
Oh, my goodness.
That became his work. So that's how we heal, isn't it? We don't have to heal ourselves. We can heal other people so they don't have the same problems.
So healing all around. That's beautiful. Thank you for connecting again, all of that wonderful examples, the really understanding that, the woundedness actually becomes something that we can connect, our current experience relating back to some wounding in our past, and then having the intention of connecting to something different in the present to heal the past. Yeah. Right. Very powerful work in this regard, very powerful work. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you. So you mentioned, you talk about in your book, when we're talking about the third chakra now. Yeah. So moving on, you said it's when we're kind of finding our sense of self and what we're going to do, and who we're going to be in this world. You talk about the inner voices of the third chakra. And I think this goes a nice place to dovetail. Please share with that, because it's just a beautiful framework.
Yes, with the third chakra, we are becoming more thinking. The second chakra is much more emotional and sensory. And while there is emotion, and obviously in the third chakra, we're beginning to think and make judgments a lot more. And we can develop a very harsh inner judge.
Yes.
That I call the inner critic.
Yes.
And this can be a great cause of wounding, actually, especially if we have critical parents. Yes. We start to develop a very critical inner judge. So one of the things I do when I'm working with this chakra is help people to build an inner champion. So we have a balance between a voice that can think nothing wrong. There can be no harm. We have done nothing wrong. We are wonderful. and the critical voice. And so the inner champion, the sort of things I might suggest to somebody is that they start off by just writing down everything that they own that they feel pleased about. So, they really like their clothes. They really like their home, their flat, their car, their pictures, their ornaments, their furniture, whatever it is. Anything that you think, I'm so glad I've got that little sculpture on the table. I really like that candle or whatever it is.
Yes.
So you just write down and really notice to yourself things you own. That's the simplest one. The next thing is write down all the things you've achieved. Okay. From very, very simple things like I used to help my mother a lot when she was getting older. I was a good son to her, or a good daughter or son. I passed exams. I became very skillful at plumbing or whatever the skills are that you've developed.
Yes.
So you write a list of all the achievements, which can be about career, but they can also be about relationships and life. So you can say, I built a very good relationship with my first boyfriend. I had whatever it can, and you're allowed to treat boyfriends like things, and you're allowed to see it as an achievement. Whereas,
understood,
there's a lot more to it than that. Of course.
Understood.
Yeah, and then having gone through that area of your, of your whole life, look at your qualities, your personal qualities. Actually, you might want to sit and look in the mirror. What is it about yourself that you think, actually, I'm glad that I'm a kind person. I'm glad that I'm an intelligent person. I'm glad that I'm creative, artistic, or I'm glad that I'm a sporty person. I'm glad, all the things that you feel pleased about in terms of your personality and your gifts, your personal qualities, write those down and add to those, hardest part of all for most people, this I find, your physical qualities. That's where the mirror helps. Actually look in the mirror and think, well, what do you like? Do you like your hair? Do you like your face? Do you like your eyes, your lips? What parts of yourself, of your body do you like? Do you just nice hands, whatever it is? Just write them down and start to build this sense of an inner champion. Okay. And then what you can do next is take one of those, perhaps one of your achievements, I'm or a quality, I'm a kind person. And then you might have noticed all the time you were writing this down, actually, that your inner critic jumps in and says, well, the other day when such and such happened, you weren't very kind to so-and-so.
That's right. Yes. Yes.
And then you need to have a dialogue. You need to be able to allow the inner champion to say, yes, well, there was a reason for that. This is why I wasn't at my best, partly to do with me, partly to do with that person, and so on. So the inner champion argues your case, and slowly you build a critical friend. The inner critic stops just attacking you, and starts. There are times when you need an inner critic. You could have done something really unkind.
Sure.
You need a voice that says, I shouldn't have been that mean to that person. You need that voice, but it needs to be in balance. It needs to listen to the inner champion and not be just a critical voice. So getting the inner critic and the inner champion into balance is one of the tasks of the solar plexus chakra, the third chakra.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. Okay. So another way to really make it practical, how do we integrate that third chakra energy, of that sort of inner critic? Again, very, very practical. I love that. So you do a wonderful parallel of the current modern research that's going on with the chakra system. So you talk a lot about the gut brain.
Yeah. Well, we live in a world that's tended to tell us, over the last 100 years, that we've got this body that's rather like a machine and a brain that is the mind. So our mind is all inside our head. The chakras have a very different story. They say that consciousness is embodied throughout the whole body and beyond into the aura and expanding into the whole universe. That's how absent healing occurs. We can expand infinitely out there if we're able, if we learn how to work with our energy.
Yes.
So the chakra system's got a very different idea of mind and body. The mind is everywhere. Consciousness is everywhere. This is where my philosophy comes in.
Yes.
Consciousness is primary.
Yes.
And interestingly, the scientific world is beginning to back that up, because it's now telling us that we've got a little brain inside our heart. Our heart cells are 60% neural cells.
Yes.
With axonal and dendritic connections, with neurotransmitters, just like inside the head. We've got a small brain about the size of a cat's brain inside our hearts. And then in our guts, we've got 500 million nerve cells embedded inside the intestines. Incredible. 500 million. We've got an enteric nervous system is the posh word for it.
Yes.
A gut brain is the one that makes sense to everybody.
That's right.
Which produces over 95% of our serotonin, which is our feel-good hormone. And that's developing that hormone inside our abdomen. Yeah. And that's exactly where the second chakra is, in the lower abdomen.
Go figure.
Yeah. So all these links with science are beginning to happen. And with the heart chakra, which has been reclassified as an endocrine gland.
Yes.
It produces oxytocin, which is the love hormone, the bonding hormone. So all these links are being discovered by science that are beginning eventually they'll have to sort of say, oh, yes, well, the chakras are right.
I guess, thousands and thousands of years, meant something. Thank you. Thank you for connecting all those dots. It's really useful. It's really useful. So yes. So our heart chakra, going back to that, I love the way you call the heart chakra our inner healer. And again, you've outlined that through love and acceptance. And we know that these days, there's so much research on compassion and self-forgiveness. And so here we go again with those intersections. I love that.
Yeah.
You also talk about the true self. And this is a really big part of the authentic self. This is fundamental to the way, I learn and teach, and coach. Is talk to us about the true self and the heart chakra.
Yes, well, when that heart chakra opens, and as well as the inner healer, it's also our inner witness, heart chakra, because it witnesses compassionately the lower chakras, but doesn't identify with them. It's that loving but separate aspect of our consciousness, and that enables us to evolve. So where I said earlier, the throat chakra is where we express our woundedness, unless the heart's open. As the heart opens and we witness and experience the world in a different way, not so ruled by our woundedness, we're able to let go of that woundedness. And that's where the true self, the authentic self, can evolve. It's the journey from the heart chakra to the throat chakra. And it's a most powerful journey. I want to say it's exactly similar in the Judeo-Christian Kabbalah system, which has this image of a tree of life. I don't know if you know, but the tree of life has 3 columns, and it has you journey up in a similar way as you do through the chakras, and the heart chakra, the journey from the heart to the throat chakra, they say, is in the triad, which is like a triangle of purification. And in the chakra system, the throat chakra is called purification. Visudu is the Sanskrit word. The name of the throat chakra is the Sanskrit word for purification. So the journey, once your heart opens, you kind of think, oh, yes, I'm not really this person. That's just a person I created to cope with the difficulties of childhood. Beautiful. I'm quite different. This is who I am, really. I'm really an artist, or I'm really whatever it is.
I love that.
Yeah. So you make this journey from the heart to the throat, which is a journey of losing the false self and finding the true self. And for some people, this is a blissful journey. This is an easy, enlightening, awakening journey. And for some people, it is the dark night of the soul. It's where you face your demons.
That's right.
Where you realize what an awful way you've behaved and so on. So it's different for everybody, but there are different paths of purification. Some have it easier than others.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. I love that. Again, I'm getting the understanding that it's really that flow, that dynamic energy flow, that we come into a different perception or a different awareness, and we connect to our own wounds, our own vulnerability in that regard. And that's so beautiful, because then we are not defined by it, I guess, is really what it comes to. We step into, to your point, our true identity.
Lovely.
I love this. Okay. So I guess the main healing energy in this work really comes from the heart.
It does. It does. And when you think that the Heart Math Institute has shown that when we have those feelings, we get bigger. I mean, the aura
literally,
is part of us.
literally,
we
yes.
truly become a bigger person.
I love that.
And what they've also discovered is that we interact at that our electromagnetic field influences people that are in contact with it. So you may have found yourself in some kind of relationship, whether it's personal or career, with somebody that you found just left you feeling utterly miserable. Well, it's quite possible that their electromagnetic field was influencing yours. And alternatively, you might have found there's somebody that you worked with or lived with that just raised your spirits, and you might be being healed by their electromagnetic field. We're interacting at that auric level with each other all the time.
Yes, yes. And to bring it back to what your first experience was, if you are not aware and maybe have some tools, that can be quite, disruptive in one's life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you recommend or teach or guide, your clients to make sure that they stay sovereign and self-contained so they can self-regulate? Because this is a big, understanding around we are all energy.
Yes. Yes. And it is about visualizing protection when you need it. Now, we don't need protection all the time. If we're feeling in a safe space, it's not good to create boundaries around ourselves.
Okay.
So, and especially if you're a healer or a therapist, you actually want those electromagnetic fields to interact in a good way.
In a good way. Mm-hmm.
The secret is to become conscious. So in situations where you feel safe with the people around you, you feel positive, you feel there's a good experience happening, you don't need to protect yourself. You want to expand and interact at that auric level.
Yes.
But when you don't feel safe, I mean, the example I usually take is when you're traveling on the underground. You call it, we call it something different in the US, don't you?
Yes, the train, the subway. Yes.
The subway, yes.
Public transportation, yes.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
You're going on the subway. Time to protect yourself. It might be great on the subway, but you need. So there are several things you can do. You can be conscious of your chakras. Now, at a psychological level, the chakras are always open, and that's how it is. They're working away, creating your personality, your being, and so on. But at a psychic level, you can close them. Mm-hmm. And you can't close the crown chakra and you can't close the base chakra, because their job is to just bring spiritual energy and earth energy into you.
Yes.
But the others you can close, and you can just have a sense, I'm just going to switch off my eye chakra. Okay. I'm going to switch off my throat chakra. I do a little, you can't see, obviously it's a podcast, so you can't, but I do a little action, pretending I'm closing it down as though there's a screw on it. Correct. Or whatever's right for you, just have a sense that you're just closing the psychic level, closing the psychic level of the heart chakra, closing the psychic level of the solar plexus chakra, and closing the psychic level of the sacral chakra. You work your way down, and then you put around yourself a protective shield.
Beautiful.
For example, a spacesuit. A spacesuit is, imagine you've got a big spacesuit around you, and that's going to stop any negative energy coming in. Mm-hmm. Alternatively, if you don't like the idea of walking around in a spacesuit, a dark blue nurse's cloak. This was they actually considered that a protection in 100 years ago. When the nurses wore these deep blue cloaks.
Fascinating.
So you could have a nurse's cloak that goes right down to the ground, as it would have done in those days, and it has a hood on. You can put the hood over yourself, and you protect yourself. So, or you might want to find your own version of, it might be an energetic shield that surrounds you of white light. Mm-hmm. Choose something that feels appropriate for you. That's basically you saying to the world and to yourself, I am not letting any negative energy in. This is not going to influence me.
Yes.
So you have to do it through your mind. You have to do it with consciousness.
Yes.
Those are some of the
Very
ways
helpful.
that I would do it.
Very helpful. Thank you so much. Okay. So we're living in very interesting times, and you talk very beautifully about this in the book, about the inspiration, or I can say the aspiration, to moving towards more heart-centered consciousness on the planet, right? And it's interesting, you cited the Findhorn community as an example of that. And my couple previous guests, I had a gentleman who lived at the Findhorn community. So
lovely.
I'd never heard of it. So I was like, connecting the dots. How beautiful. So, what's a thoughtful way of talking about what you call authentic consciousness, heart-centered consciousness? What are some words maybe you can bring to understanding what's happening and maybe, some hope for where we're going and evolving?
Well, I think that what we have to do as a human race is make the transition from dominant solar plexus chakra consciousness to dominant heart chakra consciousness.
Yes.
In addition, we do have to ground ourselves. We have to look after our inner animal and inner child, and we have to look after our inner young adult in the solar plexus chakra. But at the moment, Western culture is dominated by this individualistic, aspirational consciousness. And another aspect of the chakra system is that there are channels. There are 3 channels, just as I mentioned in the Kabbalah system. There are 3 channels in the chakra system. There's a solar channel which runs up the right side of the body, and it's our aspirational, individual, separate side. And there's a lunar channel that's our relational, empathic, connected side. And so the solar channel is that we are a sun shining out. The lunar channel, we are a moon reflecting. Traditionally, the solar channel is considered masculine. The lunar channel is considered feminine. In the Western world, we've got these 2 channels. There's a central channel I've not mentioned. There's a central channel, Sushumna, of balance. Yes. And we need to bring these 2 channels into balance. We're very out of balance in most of the Western world.
Yes.
There's too much emphasis on individual aspiration, individual achievement, and not enough emphasis on connection, on taking care of everybody, of giving everybody equal opportunities. So these have to come into balance. And as they do, the shift to the heart chakra will occur.
Okay.
But until the solar plexus chakra is in balance, we can't make that shift. So we have to stop putting all our energy into individual aspiration. And I mean, certainly in this country, we have been so admiring the nurses who have been taking care of people during this pandemic.
Yes.
The doctors, the nurses, and all the many people who are not there to be the stars of the show.
Absolutely.
They're there to support and help each other. And the words are coming out now. We need a society where this kind of care happens more it's more taken care of. It's not something we just, because all these nurses and doctors, they're exhausted. They've been working overtime for over a year, and they don't see any end in sight. Because even when we get rid of the pandemic, there's all the catching up of all the other illnesses that have been put to one side.
Yes.
So we have to bring these into balance, and there are countries that do that, like Norway and Finland and Iceland. There are countries that have got a much more focus on balancing that affiliative consciousness, I call it.
I love that.
Of the lunar channel and the achievement consciousness. They need to be balanced.
Yes.
So hopefully, one of the positive outcomes of this pandemic is that we start to do that at a cultural level. We start to see the importance of taking care of everyone. And that's happening now in terms of vaccinations. It's no good just vaccinating your country. We have to vaccinate globally. We have to take care of the world.
Yes.
And that's going to build our understanding and consciousness about taking care of everyone. And that's going to move us towards a heart chakra consciousness. And that's where all the solutions will start to happen for the world and for ourselves, I believe.
Thank you so much for that. This is such a beautiful, frame for all of this. Again, microcosm, macrocosm is what comes to mind here, right? I love the way you draw that. Thank you. Oh my gosh. We just have a couple minutes left. I would love if you would maybe lead us in a very short guided visualization. You do a lovely job doing that in your book.
Okay, so I probably need to close my eyes myself in order to do this.
Yes.
I'm going to sit and I'm going to make sure that both my feet are on the floor and that my hands are resting on my legs. And I'm now going to think about my contact with the floor, my contact with the seat of the chair that I'm sitting in, my contact with the floor. Bring your attention to the fact that your body is supporting you. Your weight is falling down, right down into the center of the earth, and the earth is supporting you. This is Newton's law of action and reaction. As our weight drops down, the earth supports us. Just have a sense we're supported by this wonderful planet that we are sitting on. And then also have a sense that at the center of that earth, there is a glowing red fiery energy. And let that red energy travel to the outside of the earth, cooling down, but staying a red glowing light that comes in through our feet, through our legs, into our base chakra, lighting up the base chakra at the tip of the coccyx. This is our inner animal that's keeping us alive. It's our instinctual energy. And just let that energy from the earth feed us and nourish us, and see that glowing energy source at the tip of the bottom of the spine, the coccyx, spreading that light out across the pelvic floor and out into the aura. And then let that red energy rise up to the next chakra, the sacral chakra, which is at the top of the sacrum. And as it travels up the coccyx and the sacrum, it changes to a beautiful orange glowing energy source, shining out orange light across the lower abdomen and out into the aura. And then let that orange light travel up the spine to the next chakra, the solar plexus chakra, changing to a golden yellow light that shines out across the upper abdomen and out into the aura. These are our three lower chakras. The base chakras are inner animal, shining out in red out into the aura. The sacral chakras are inner child, shining out into the aura. And the third chakras are inner young adult, glowing a golden light out into the aura. And now we move up to the heart chakra at the center of the chest, center of the thoracic spine, a green glowing light source that shows this lovely green energy filling our chest, flowing up into the shoulders, down the arms and out of the hands. This is our lovely green healing energy, self-healing and healing the world. And it can move out of our hands and heal the world as we allow it to. And it's the color of our natural world. It's a lovely green flowing energy from that central light source at the center of the chest, at the heart. And then moving up to the top of the thoracic spine and the bottom of the neck, it changes to a blue light, a turquoisey blue, a bluey green light. That's our throat chakra energy that also shines out across the shoulders, down the arms, out of the hands, and up into the neck, into the jaw, into the ears. This is our creative communicator and potentially our true self that shines out this lovely blue, sea blue light into the aura. And then moving up to the top of the spine, the very top, the atlanto-occipital joint, it changes to a deep purpley blue light that is our eye chakra, shining out across the head and out into the aura. And that purpley blue light is our wise wisdom of the eye chakra, our creative thinker. And then letting that energy flow into the center of the brain, into the center of the head, to the pineal gland, changing to a pale lavender that shines out as white light out of the top of the head. And that white light joins with the white light of universal spiritual energy that's everywhere. And as we think of that upward flow of energy, we nourish it, we increase it. And so the energy downwards through the body, that white spiritual energy flows down through the head, through the chakras, through the spine and chakras, through the body and through the aura. We are filled with this scintillating white light that makes everything glow and cleanses and purifies the whole body, moving down through the head, the neck, the shoulders, down through the torso, down to the pelvis, down through the legs, the feet, and down into the earth. So we're connecting the earth with the heavens. We're connecting earth energy with spirit energy. And this is our purpose on life, to bring these two things together, to create heaven on earth. And we're in the process of taking our next step on this journey as a human race.
Ah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Glen. This was lovely. Thank you so much for your time. And, please tell us where our listeners can find you. And are you doing any remote healing sessions now, or will be?
I'm actually in the middle of moving house.
Okay.
I'm moving from the southeast of the UK to the southwest, which isn't very far in US terms, but it seems like an awfully long way to me. and I'm moving there because I just love the natural world in the southwest. I brought my children up there. I'm very connected to it, and I want, for my own inner animal, to get back to that part of the world.
Bravo. That sounds lovely.
I came up here for work reasons, but it's time to move to my home, my spiritual home. I always felt that's what it was.
I'm excited for you.
That's Devon.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you again. And good luck with the move. And thank you for all that you're doing in the world. It's been a pleasure.
Lovely to talk with you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.